Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Josh Hill, and I am your host of the Sobriety Social Podcast. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for being here and listening today. I spent a lot of time just thinking about the content for the show, thinking about ways that we can sort of talk about recovery, and just a lot of ways that this podcast can hopefully help you. And so I'm really, really thankful for everybody who takes the time and is willing to just show up every week and be here and listen to the show. Yeah, I'm so grateful. For those of you that are listening on YouTube, yes, that is a Tottenham Hotspur plaque in the background. It was made by one of my really good friends. So yeah, for those of you that don't know this, I am a diehard soccer fan. Come on, you Spurs. But yeah. Once again, just really thankful that you're all here today. For those of you that are just starting to tune in this season, this is season 2 of the Sobriety Social Podcast, and we're going to do 12 episodes on each of the first steps. So, just to recap a little bit, last week we talked about step 1, and that step is that we had come to the point in our lives where we understood that we were powerless over our dependencies and that our lives had become unmanageable. And we talked a lot about how as people and as addicts, we can constantly fall victim to the idea that we have control, and really bringing ourselves to a point or a position in our lives where we realize that we are out of control and that we are completely powerless. Our lives had become unmanageable. And one thing we talked a little bit at the end of the show was just how that step can leave us feeling a little uneasy. One of the really difficult things about the first step is we're having to come to grips with the fact that we have hit a rock bottom, that our lives have spiraled out of control. We don't really understand why other people can drink responsibly and we can't. Or whatever our drug of choice is, that has really kind of taken over our lives and made it spiral out of control. Sometimes it's really hard to come to grips with the fact that we're different than other people. Why can some people use and it didn't destroy their lives like it destroyed mine? Or why can some people drink socially and that's just not an option for me? And how important it is to come to that realization that we're powerless over that dependency. But one thing I'm really excited about for this week is that step 2 is one of the first points in the 12 steps where hope enters the scene. I really love step 2 because it's one of the first points in your recovery if you decide to go through the 12 steps and the 12-step journey, that you really get to start to encounter Jesus for the first time and really start to understand that there is a better way and there is somebody out there who can help you. So let's dive in. So what is step 2? Step 2 is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Let me say that again. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So why is step 2 so important? Well, first of all, kind of like I said earlier, step 2 brings us hope. Hope is such an amazing gift that we can have in life. When we don't have dreams, when we don't have visions, we perish. The stuff that we do doesn't seem to have a lot of meaning. But when we have hope, we are motivated to continue to push forward. We believe that what we're doing is worth it. What we're doing in our recovery and what we're doing to get better is worth it. So yeah, step 1 leaves us feeling out of control and that our lives are unmanageable. Those are important feelings to experience, but step 2 is so important because hope enters the scene. And secondly, we get to have our first encounter in our recovery with God. That we believe that our higher power can restore us to sanity. That's super important. And for me, I believe that our higher power is God, Yahweh, that his son Jesus is involved and invested in our life, and that's super important. And the other reason why that's so important is because dealing with step 2 is what sets us up to start getting ready for the rest of the 12 steps. So if we don't deal with step 1 and we don't believe that our lives had become unmanageable and that we were powerless, we don't necessarily see the need to have a higher power. We don't really see the need for God. We think we have it all under control. And then secondly, if you don't deal with the fact that there is a higher power and come to that belief, then the rest of the steps where we allow God to really start working in our lives and start refining us, those steps are meaningless. So I think that that's one of the big reasons that step number 2 is so important. But one thing I would really like to bring up here is that it's so important not to rush the steps. Kind of like I was just talking about, if you don't deal with these first 2 steps, then the rest of the steps are pointless. You can rush forward, you can start to deal with some of the next issues in your recovery, but it's not going to do much for you because you don't actually believe that you have a problem, or B, you don't believe that there's a higher power that can restore you to sanity, that can start to work through you and refine you in your recovery. So yeah, I think it's super important to recognize that there is a higher power and we need them. It was really interesting. I made a Instagram post a few days ago just talking a little bit about how of that feeling of being in control, and how in our recovery we need to give up the idea that we are in control and that we need to give control over to God. And what one of those people commented was just that they think that that's complete BS. They believe that they have everything within themselves that they need to get sober. And I guess, props to them that they feel like they have so much of that self-confidence. But for me, I knew that I was completely beyond repair on my own. There was no way that I could do it on my own. And so to be able to come to a point that you believe in a higher power and that you believe that they can bring control and sanity and order back to your life, I guess that's the word I'm really looking for, is that they can bring order back to your life, is such an amazing feeling. All right, we need to go on a quick break, but we will be right back. All right, let's get right back into it. So, step 2 has 2 very important parts. So first, I would say that that's coming to believe that there is a higher power than ourselves, and secondly, believing that he could restore us to sanity. So let's take a second and break down that first part of step 2, coming to believe in that higher power and that he's greater than ourselves. So what does that take to come to that point? Well, first and foremost, I think that it takes humility. That's one of the hardest things in recovery. We've spent so much time in our mess and our addiction believing that we can do all of this on our own, that we do have everything that we need. We're in control. We don't need any help. And we need to come to a point where we are humble. As Kendrick Lamar likes to say, sit down, be humble. I think secondly, it's just recognizing that I'm not all that I need. Again, we talked a little bit about that Instagram comment where that person said, I have everything I need within myself to get sober. And I guess for me, I can say it was so important for me to come to that realization that I am not all that I need to get help. But that does beg the question, how can some people do this without God? There's plenty of people out there who are sober and they don't have a spiritual practice. They don't have a faith at all. And how do they do it? And I think that actually speaks a lot to how incredible God is. There's a concept called common grace. And I think that that's just understanding that God loves all people. And he has equipped all his people with some amazing personalities, amazing attributes, amazing ideas, and he loves all people. So even when we don't choose to love him, he still loves us back. He still equips us with the ability to make changes in our lives. And that's, I think that, without going into too much depth and detail, I think that's a huge reason why people who don't even necessarily believe in God still are able to get help and get sober is because we have such a gracious God. And so it's hard when we hear people give themselves credit for things that I think as a believer in Jesus Christ, I'm confident that God has equipped and helped those people. But we are not responsible for defending God. God is all powerful. He's all loving, and he will reveal himself to people um, as he so chooses. And so I think, but I do believe that that's how some people can accomplish that without God, is just the idea of common grace, and that he does still love all people. And so I guess that also brings us to the question, if you're listening today and you're saying, what if I don't believe in God? Well, I think that there's two incredible things about God, and I think that these attributes of him are played out over and over in Scripture, and that is that God will meet you wherever you're at in your recovery journey. Whether you have grown up in the church and you believed in him your whole life, or you're not really sure about this whole God thing, that doesn't matter to him. He'll meet you exactly where you're at, wherever you need. There's a story I like to tell about when I first got into treatment. And I was talking to my wife on the phone, and she said, Josh, how have you been connecting with God? Have you been praying? Have you been spending time with him? And I told her Heaven. Heaven's my wife's name. I told her, or she told me, I said, Heaven, I don't feel like I can talk to God. I feel like I have been away from him for so long, and I feel like I just don't feel like I can connect with him right now after everything that I've been through and everything I've done. And she told me, Josh, God has been there that whole time. He's never left you. He knows where you've been. He knows what you've been doing. And you can start talking to him right now today as if he's always been there. God will meet you wherever you're at. And secondly, so I would say, if you aren't in a place or a position where you believe in God or trust him right now, ask him for faith. There's examples in Scripture. There's a story I was reading just earlier in Mark, where there was a man, and his son was sick, and he asked Jesus, God, if it's possible, can you heal my son? And Jesus said, with faith all things are possible. And the man replied to Jesus, I believe, but give me more faith. Help me in the ways that I'm lacking in faith. Help me have more faith. And what an amazing thing to ask for. I think no matter where you're at in your walk or your understanding with God, just approach him wherever you're at and ask him for the faith that you need. I'm confident that in time, God will equip you with the faith that you need. But we have to be patient, and we have to allow God to work through us at his pace. I had a really good conversation with my friend David, and in fact, he's going to be a guest on next week's show. But he talks about how we can't force a tree to grow. We can water it, we can take care of it, but we can't just pour more water on it so it will grow faster. In fact, that will probably make it drown. So in the same way, we have to allow God to work in our lives and refine us and bring order to our lives in his pace and in the way that he knows is best for us. But then the second step to this step two, the second section, I guess, is actually believing that he can restore us to sanity. So once we come to a position that we do believe that there is a higher power, then the next part is dealing with, do we actually believe that he can restore us to sanity? And I think that is just to continue to speak more into that aspect of faith. There's a section in the Bible, Hebrews chapter 11, and I would encourage you, if you haven't read it, or even if you have, to go check it out. But Hebrews chapter 11 takes a list of sort of all the Bible greats, they would be just the people that we all know in our culture, kind of the main people that have really influenced our culture. So these are the people in the Bible that have are kind of the main characters that you hear a lot of the stories about. And it just lists all the ways that they've had such great faith, and all the ways that God has kind of come through for them over the time, and the things that he has given to them, and the credit that he has given to them because of their faith. And for some of these people, they were in the depths of the despair in the worst times in their life, and God met them there, and because of their faith, he helped bring them out. But all of these stories are just of people that believe that God was capable of providing for them, that whether they were in the lowest point of their life, that God was capable of bringing them out of that mess, or if everything was going super great for them, they had faith that those things were because God's great faithfulness to them. But I'd like to say, spoiler alert, if we allow God to start working in our lives and refining us through our recovery, It doesn't always feel good all the time. There will be times that it is hard. There will be times that it is painful, and that's part of the refining process. So through step 2, it's so important to first come to the belief that there is a higher power, but then also having that faith and believing that he will restore us to sanity. But friends, there is hope. If you're still working through step number 1 and just understanding that your life is unmanageable, that you don't have control over your dependencies, know that there is hope, that there is a God and that he is capable of restoring you to sanity. I hope that was encouraging for you this week. I appreciate you all so much. If you like what you heard, I would just ask if you would hit the subscribe button. Feel free to rate the show. And also, I wanted to tell you guys really quickly about a little bit of a side project that I got started. So it's called the Sobriety Short Show. It's another podcast. It's kind of a short form podcast. So the idea behind it is just to come out with episodes 5 minutes or less. I think the shortest one so far has been 3 minutes. The longest one's been like a little over 4 minutes. But I just take some time to hopefully encourage you in recovery. I want those shows to come out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So yeah, if you like this content, I'd love it if you go check that out as well. Otherwise, I love you all so much, and we'll see you next week where we talk about step number 3.